That is Glen Hansard and a live solo version, a beautiful one at that, of a song that appears on the latest album by his group, The Frames. The album is called For the Birds, and that is Lay Me Down. Glen, welcome to Mixed Bag.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Pleasure to have you. To some of our listeners, For the Birds might be the first awareness of you and or The Frames that they have, but this is not your debut album.
No, it's our fourth.
Nor are The Frames rookies in any way, shape, or form. So before we go back to pick up on some of your history, I just want to ask you about this new release and how you feel it differs from the previous recordings that you've done with The Frames.
Well, it's different because it's the first record we've made where we absolutely had no editing facility in our minds when we made it. The whole idea of the record was, our history is very much that we made records on major labels, you know, and I guess the dream would be that we would have a hit, and you know, things would all sort of shoot forward and the dream would be realized. And all through our career, we kind of I suppose we felt we had sort of like compromised here and there to sort of try and make the record more attractive to the people who were putting it out, to the record labels. And I kind of noticed this really uncomfortable pattern emerging through our career, where I realized that I didn't listen to our records at all. I wasn't, you know, I sort of noticed that I didn't like my band very much at one point, which really freaked me out. And I remember having this conversation, you know, with the boys and saying, like, you know, we have to make music that we would go out and buy. I mean, that's the bottom line. It has to be something, you know, it has to be the kind of music you'd enjoy making. So this batch of songs were, you know, I guess for you know, one of the problems people have always had with The Frames is that, you know, and it's been said to us 100 times, we don't know how to sell your band. You're neither a rock band, nor a folk band, nor an indie rock band, or punk rock. We don't know what you are. and so for us, it's always been like, well, you know, just put the record on the shelves and put us in front of people, and I swear to God, we'll do our best to make, you know, figure that one out, because we were never really a sellable band in people's minds. So, with this record, for me, it was a case of, okay, look, we've got this batch of songs. You know, whatever songs come out are where you are. You can't fight or change what you're doing. It's just something that comes out of you. And I brought these songs to Trevor, and I played this sort of acoustic guitar, and I played some demos, and I said, look, I really want to make this record really quiet, withdrawn record. You know, absolutely no commercial songs on it whatsoever. You know, if it gets to basically the philosophy of The Frames had been, you know, in recent years, if we get success and if things go our way, it'll be because we made a decision to make a certain kind of music, or to you know, everything good that happens will be because we've done well, as opposed to lied or tried to pull the wool over anyone's eyes.
Right. The integrity of the music should be what carries.
Well, absolutely. You know, and that's kind of like, it sounds like the absolute obvious, but so often with bands on major labels, the integrity of the music is often the first thing to suffer, just because of commerce, unfortunately. So this record was like, these are the songs, this is how it's going to be, please let us go, because you know it's not going to sell the amount of copies you needed to sell for us to sort of make up the money on the books. You know that I know that you're going to tamper with it until it's no good, and so please let it go. Let this record go, let this band go, because if I don't get out of this job soon, I'm going to get sick. You know, and he was like, okay, well, fair enough. And that was the one great thing he did for us. He sort of said, fair enough, you're not going to make me money, so good luck.
To fill in a couple of the blanks that I mentioned earlier, first of all, you mentioned Trevor. Trevor Horn is the guy who owns ZTT Records, okay, and the label we were signed to for the past few years. And he let you free. Yeah, he let us go, and it was incredible, because it was the one thing, because basically the record we'd made before that and the record we'd made before that, Trevor had, you know, hired engineers, brought engineers in from LA to do remixes of certain songs, and we've never been the kind of band who've been interested in that. And I suppose we saw ourselves building up huge debts, you know, and sort of saying, look, this record it's simple, it's easy to record, it's done. We recorded it in 2 weeks in France. Just put it out as it is. And Trevor's the kind of man, and which I admire and I think is terrible in another way. He would go around the whole planet, like trying to make the record different and trying to sort of bring out the best qualities in it, and then eventually go back to your demos and say, yeah, you were right.
after spending $100,000 of your money, you know.
Right.
Which was just silly.
There's obviously a reason for the group being called the Frames, and it has something to do with your early bicycle experiences.
Yeah, I was kind of like the local bicycle mechanic when we were kids. I don't really know how I got into doing that. It's just something I used to be fascinated, but taking tape recorders apart and then putting them back together, and taking bicycles apart and putting different parts on them, and making concoctions of bikes. And basically, I think it grew out of a love of skips. When I was a kid, I just used to love, when I'd come across a bin, I'd pretty much hang out there and that's why I love New York, because it's got the greatest bins in the world. And take bicycles home. And basically, I had a garden full of bicycle frames, and people used to call our house, the house with the frames.
The house with the frames.
Yeah, and then it sort of turned into, I thought it would be a funny band name.
Were you doing music simultaneously with that, or was that a later pursuit?
Actually, I got my first electric guitar my first ever guitar, because there was always a guitar in the house because my family were all musical, but the first guitar that I owned was a sort of a Gibson SG copy, because I was an Angus Young fanatic, and from AC/DC, and so, but I remember I learned the guitar for a few months, and then I swapped it for a BMX, because it was the BMX Super that came out with the gold mag wheels, and I thought it was amazing, and this guy had it, and he was totally into AC/DC, so I swapped my first guitar to him for his BMX, and then I realized that I'm not a BMX guy, I'm a guitar player, so I swapped him back.
Your first attempts or forays at performing was a phrase that's more familiar in Europe and in your country than it is in America, but that's the whole notion of busking. You want to talk about that a little?
Well, busking was something that I was advised to do by my school master, because basically I spent a lot of time hanging out with him when I was younger, because I was always being sent to him for lack of attention, or for just being, out of hand in the class. It was generally lack of attention, as opposed to me being a bully or doing anything crazy. But what was amazing was we would end up hanging out with me and this guy, because he was a DJ, the headmaster, and he was a DJ who loved Bob Dylan, and my mother had weaned me on Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, so I knew all about Bob and I knew all about Leonard, and they were my heroes. So we'd sit down in the office and I'd be like, did you get Desire? And he's like, oh, I love Desire. And we'd talk about Joey, or we'd talk about Sarah, whatever tracks. We'd just be discussing Bob Dylan the whole time, and we got on really well. And eventually, he was like, what do you want to do, Glenn? Because you're in a really good class, you've got brains to burn, you're wasting your time. What do you really want to do? So I want to be a musician, of course. He's like, do you play? So I brought my guitar in, I played for him, and he said to me, you know what, man? He said, I know you're only 14, but just split. Do it, man. He said, split, go, but make sure you don't waste your time. Because I grew up in Ballymun, which is kind of like the sort of most working class area in Dublin, and so basically the whole teaching in our school was, leave school at 15, do your intercert, leave school at 15, get a job, get yourself a wife and earn some money, and that's the best you could hope for. There was never any talk of doing the leaving. It was never really an option in our school. We weren't forced to go on to further education. Nobody talked about it. And he was amazing. He said, look, just split now. You're wasting your time. You're going to be here for another 2 years, and you could be out in the street learning your trade. He said, so go and do it. But he said, do it today. He says, bring your school bag home, throw it on the couch, and go into town today and do it. Don't mess around. He said, come back in and tell me if you've done it. So I went into town that day, brought my school bag home, said to me, Ma, listen, Ma, I've left school. Frankie said it's okay, everything's cool, I'm going to go busking. My Ma was like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, it's a good idea. I know this is what I'm going to do. And I went into town and I went busking, and I earned 40p on my first song. And I immediately closed my case after that song, and I went home, and I went to a cafe on the way home, bought myself a takeaway cup of tea, and it was the best cup of tea I'd ever tasted, because it was the first cup of tea it was the first anything that I ever bought that was made from money that I'd got from my music, and it was the most amazing feeling.
Were you already writing at this point? Or
Yeah, I'd written a few songs. I mean, very Bob Dylan-esque, but I'd written a few songs. I mean, from the very beginning I was writing songs. It just seemed like a natural thing to be doing, as opposed to, I was learning songs all the time, but writing songs seemed to be sort of an easy thing to do.
Is there something from those early days that you could do for us?
This song was about a situation. Ballymun, where I grew up, was famous. It's all high-rise buildings. It was famous for people coming out there and committing suicide, because it was the only high-rise area in the city. And This is about sitting on the grass one day drinking, and seeing this guy hang from the roof, and we were watching him. And he was hanging out the balcony. He wasn't decided, and we were sitting there going, "Jump, come on, do it." Me and my mates, and basically, to make a long story short, he did, and he eventually jumped off, and we were all shocked. And I remember the priest, our local priest, Father Martin, who was a really cool guy, ran across the lawn, losing his sandals on the way to try get to him to give him his last rites. And we all stood around this guy and realised that it was one of my mate's dads. And I remember it was a really intense afternoon, and we all went home. And I remember going home to tell my mother, and she was asleep. And this song kind of came out of that. So this is probably one of the first songs that I've written. This is called Telegraph Poles. Collision on my front door today. One man died and another man tried to stop it. There was a head-on collision at my front door today. One man died and another man tried to stop it. I was hanging on the pole and I saw what happened. I went to tell me ma, but she was sleeping. Saw what happened. Don't take that man away, it wasn't his fault. Telegraph poles are good for climbing, but don't touch the live wire at the tip of the barrel. Telegraph poles are good for climbing, but don't touch the live wire at the tip of the barrel. Sister, you know you mean everything to me, but I'm not sure if I'll be here tomorrow. Sister, you know you mean everything to me, but I'm not sure if I'll be here tomorrow. Telegraph poles are good for climbing, but don't touch the live wire, tip of the barrel. Telegraph poles are good for climbing, don't touch the live wire at the tip of the barrel, tip of the barrel, tip of the barrel.
Mixed Bag Radio will continue right after this. And now let's get back to more of Mixed Bag Radio.
When I was listening to your music in preparation for this visit, Glen, this line from a Don McLean song kept coming into my head, something to the effect of soft and tender like words whispered over a coffin.
Wow.
And a lot of your material has that feel to it. That one almost literally based on the story you told us. Do you agree? Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, it's I don't know if it's my place to agree or not. I know that song was kind of like an apology, you know, if I could sort of say sorry to the dude for taunting him, you know, because we were just kids and we were just, you know, he didn't jump because we were saying it. He was obviously going to do it anyway. But it just you know, it made me realize, actually it was a very, I remember just to draw a parallel, I nearly fell asleep a few weeks ago driving home from the country, and a rabbit ran out in front of me and I killed it. And I was almost asleep at the wheel. And to draw the parallel, I was on a rocky road, a very seriously dodgy road, and that guy woke me up, you know, because we were kidding and fooling around and kind of slagging him a bit, you know. And when he jumped, I remember realizing what a fool I was. And it kind of, I remember, like, not necessarily specifically because of that exact day, but I remember it was a definite turning point in my life, because I remember just going in and playing music all the time and sort of burying myself in my guitar. And, you know, because I guess I was doing a few drugs that I shouldn't have been doing, and drinking a lot, and, you know, just being a young teenager, but on a path that might not have been very productive.
You never know where these lessons are going to come.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about something that I'm assuming was a happy and joyful experience for you, but maybe you'll say differently. How did you become involved with what many people consider to be one of the best rock and roll movies of all time, The Commitments?
Well, it was very, very strange for me, because I kind of consider that period in my life a bit like pulling in off the highway, getting your sweets, getting a cup of coffee, going to the toilet, getting back in the car and getting on with it. So it's kind of strange for me to talk about, to be honest, because it was 3 months of my life that where I worked very hard and did something for someone else. You know, I was part of someone else's vision, really enjoyed myself, had an absolute ball. I was busking on the streets, and these people approached me and said, look, you know, you fit the bill exactly for someone we're looking for. Have you ever acted? I was like, no. Do you want to do an audition? Sure. You know, would you like to be in a film? And I was like, I mean, my whole logic was deadly. I mean, something to show the grandchildren, you know, a bit as, you know, something that I can, if I was in a film, it'd be a good laugh, you know, as opposed to being like, this is an opportunity for fame or success. I was thinking this would be deadly, you know. So I went along and I did the audition. They wanted me to read a few lines, and I'm from the part of Dublin where the character is from. I look like the character. I sort of fit the bill, really. And all these other people, like there was, you know, 3,000 people going for the auditions, you know. And I knew nothing about it. All I knew was that this guy made Pink Floyd The Wall. And Pink Floyd The Wall was one of my favourite films. I mean, the film I actually didn't love, but the album I adore, you know. So it was one of those things where I was like, wow, this guy's cool. He knew Roger Waters, or, you know, this guy knew Floyd, you know, I'd love to meet him. So I went along, met him, and all I wanted to talk about was Pink Floyd. And he said, can you read these lines for me? And so I read them. And he was like, right, okay, and next, or whatever. And I was like, cool, I didn't care. To be honest, it was neither here nor there to me. I was going to go back out and go busking, because I suppose from the very beginning, all my eggs were in one basket. From the very beginning, I was going to be a musician, and if someone wanted me to be in a film, cool, deadly. But it didn't bother me either way if I was going to be in it or not, because it didn't fit into my idea of where I was going. So they called me back and they said, "Listen, we think you're really good, and would you like to play the part of Outspan, this guy in this film?" And they gave me the book, and I love Roddy Doyle's writing. And the book blew me away, and I fell in love with the character I was playing. And we went and we spent 3 months making this film, and it was just amazing. It was in Dublin. I was up every morning at 7 o'clock. I was feeling really good, eating well, because there was good food on the set. Everything was grooving, you know. I had a great time doing it. And then it was over, and I was kind of sad, because I really, it was the first sort of, the first sort of drama group, I suppose, or anything like that I was ever involved in. And these are a bunch of people that I never really knew beforehand, and they were good mates now. It was the closest I got to having good work pals, you know. 3 months intensive work with a bunch of people. And then it was over. And we were all sent home, and we had a paycheck in our pockets, and I was delighted. I bought myself a Vespa, you know, bought myself new clothes, bought myself a guitar amp and a new guitar. Really, you know, I got paid well, I was happy. Everything was groovy. And then about a year later, we got a phone call to say, in 2 weeks' time, we begin the promotion. Are you ready? And it was all visa forms and passport, requirements. And I was like, wow. And they're like, we're going to America. And I'd never been. So I was like, wow, deadly, man, we're going to go to the States, And my first thing was, when do we hit Greenwich Village? Because I was like, that's where I want to go and be.
You've anticipated one of my questions. What did that mean to you? What did coming here represent to you?
Well, it was all Bob Dylan, For me, it was all about the dream. He came down from Minnesota. I was coming from a little bit further, but it was the same dream, to come to New York, the city where everything seems to have kind of come from or happened in. So we came and we landed in LA first, actually, which was kind of strange because I remember landing into this town that was just really, really, really weird. It was just all highways and hotels, and I couldn't relate to it in any way. It was really, really strange. But the one good thing was that the first night of our playing, we rehearsed with Wilson Pickett in LA, and it was amazing. This very strange man, surrounded by people, came in with a cape on and like wearing lots of jewellery and looking really out of it and really strange. Was telling me to play more black, And I was playing my guitar and I'm like, what do you mean? How do you play more black? He said, hang on the beat, man. Hang on the beat. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? And he took the guitar and he says, here. And he's like, and he can't play guitar. But he's just like, and he was like right behind the snare, whatever. And I was like, wow, all right, I'll try my best. And he was like, you're good for a white boy, And I was like, wow. And this was my first experience, with anything like this. So immediately it was incredible. But my guitar roadie was the coolest dude of all. And his name was Jeff Buckley. And we had picked him up, the film company people had picked him up. He was just a guy who was willing to do the work. He was travelling around with the band and basically fixing the guitar strings when they broke and taking care of stuff and lifting the gear down when we were finished and getting it out of the way. While we went and schmoozed with Madonna and James Brown and all the rest of them. Which I didn't really do much because I wasn't, to be honest, it just seemed all a bit surreal to me, It was an incredible time, the whole thing was a whirlwind. And me and Jeff became my pal, and we traveled through the States, and everywhere we went, me and him would space off into record stores and talk about Bob Dylan continuously. That was all we talked about, the two of us.
And you didn't know his musical lineage?
In Chicago, I played the Tim Buckley song Once I Was in the hotel because I was a Tim Buckley fan. I just got into him actually, but I was really into this song. And he was sitting there and he was like, oh, wow, I know that song. And I was like, it's deadly, isn't it? And he was like, he was my dad. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, he was my dad. He said, look, I didn't know him. It's not, it's not a big deal, but he was my dad. And I was like, that's amazing, man. And he's like, yeah. And we moved on and we talked about something else. But I was like, that's far out, man. And then we got to New York. And this was an amazing night. This is kind of something that I feel proud to have been part of. We hit New York. And immediately all I wanted, we were staying up on 58th Street, in some huge hotel. And Central Park was there and it was all very overwhelming, but all I wanted to do was get in a cab and go to the Village. That was immediately what I wanted to do. So me and Jeff got in a cab, went down to the Village, and when we got out of the cab, I saw this. It was like in a drain, in like a sort of it was in the sidewalk, there was water flooding, down the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing a huge picture of the Commitments floating down the drain, and I was like, no, that's weird. A picture of me like with the rest of the boys, floating down. And I was like, my first day in New York, and I see a picture of myself floating in the gutter. And I was like, is that a sign? Should I be careful? And myself and Jeff hung out in the Village, and we just went to all the record stores and just went to the famous like Bleecker Street and just went to like basically look for the Gaslight Cab. We were hanging out, basically trying to find all these amazing places. And we went back uptown and we were sitting at the hotel, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who owns a cafe, an Irish cafe, which is gone now in the Village, called Sinead. And he said to me, Glenn, listen, an old friend from Ireland, he's like, Glenn, can you get the Commitments down here? It'd be great for the cafe, it'd look really good, and can you pull it off? Are they around? And I said, well, look, to be honest with you, Andrew's off, doing David Letterman, the girls are on Jay Leno, they're not around, and I'm just like, we were doing 40 interviews a day and doing lots of TV, and we were knackered, and I was like, there's no way we can do it. But I tell you, myself and my mate Jeff are here, and I'd love, because I was thinking, I get to play in Greenwich Village, in the East Village, and so we jumped in, and he was like, come on, it'd be deadly. So he jumped in a cab, went down to the village, went down, found Sinead, and went in and got up on stage at about 11:30, and I played a few songs, and I went into Sweet Thing by Van Morrison, and Jeff was sitting there, and he was like, "Can I get up?" And I was like, "Come on, man!" And he got up and started singing with me, and basically I took the first verse, and Jeff took the second verse, and whatever happened to him, he hadn't done this in all the time we'd played together up to now, but he just launched into this huge vocal, just solo. It's probably the best way of putting it. And it was just amazing. He just was really grooving. He was, we were in New York. He was happy. I was happy. We were, but he spaced into this amazing second verse that took 20 minutes to finish. And by the end of the 20 minutes, the whole of Mark's Place was kind of full of people looking in the window going, what the hell is that? What is that voice? And all the waitresses in the cafe fell in love with him. And he fell in love with one of them and got a job washing dishes that night. And said to me, "Glenn, I'm not going on with the film. I'm bailing. I'm staying here. This is amazing." And that same evening, I was like, absolutely, Jeff, you stay here, you do it, man. This is amazing. And I wanted to stay too, but I had to carry on. And that night we met a man called Hal Wilner, who brought us back to his apartment on Tompkins Square Park, and was showing, playing us Harry Partch albums and playing us Tom Waits records that we'd never heard, and was playing us some amazing music. And he had this idea that night to set up a tribute concert to Tim Buckley and have Jeff be the sort of secret guest. And it was an amazing idea, because basically what he was saying seemed to be, welcome to New York. I'm going to take you under my wing and make sure things happen, and so the Tim Buckley concert was set up, and Jeff went and played, and I got a letter off him saying, "This is incredible. Everything's going really well. I've just signed to Sony. I'm going to make a record. It's, New York, it's brilliant."
So you were not surprised as he began making his mark in music, but I'm assuming you were shocked at the untimely nature of his demise.
Yeah, I mean, it was, of course, it was a very, very, very intense thing to hear, because he'd rang me a week before and left a message on my phone. I'd gone down to the shops and left a message just saying, "How's it going? I just wanted to say hello. Haven't spoke to you in ages. Hope you're well." And it was just and then a week later hearing that was just, I mean, I don't know how to talk about it. I know he was making his record, and I know that he was really happy about what he was about to do, was what he was talking about,
It was a drowning accident, correct?
Well, yeah, that's according to the papers, yeah.
You wrote a song for him. Would you mind doing that for us?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So this is called Meet the Beaches, and it was kind of a song that just sort of came. Sometimes you open your mouth and a song will just come, and then you don't question it and you move on. And this was one of those where it was a first draft where I happened to be, I had my tape recorder rolling, and I just sort of lashed out a bunch of ideas, but this came out as a complete sort of song. And I guess I was thinking about him when I was doing it, so it sort of became his song in my head. So it's called Meet the Beaches. Hand me down the picture of you leaving unsaid. I know how simple it gets. But say, by chance I need you, will you always be there? And I will lie with you neath the beaches on the strand again. Well, I'm learning to hand it over to whatever Lord there be. And the same old colors. I'll be dressed for thee. But it's not about that, though, is it? It's about you and me. And I will lie with you beneath the beaches on the strand again. Well, I hung your feet, that famous painting above my bed, and you told me a story about some guy who kept his head. He drowned beneath the Southport, beneath the pier where we stand. And I will lie with you beneath the beaches on the strand. You meet the beaches on the strand again.
More Mixed Bag Radio coming up after this. This is Pete Fornatale on Mixed Bag with my special guest, Glen Hansard of The Frames. Glen, before we let you out of here, I'm going to impose on you to tell a story of another brush with greatness that you had. And I'm assuming that this gentleman must be or have been an idol as well, and that's Van the Man, Van Morrison.
Yeah, man. When I was busking, again, I came out of busking. I remember a long, long time ago busking, and I was playing Sweet Thing by Van Morrison, busking up the money, myself and my friend Mick, busking up the money to make it to go see Van Morrison playing that night in the National Stadium, which was the venue in Dublin. And he passed by and gave us some money. And I remember that at a very young age, that was like the most, just, I was 15, and Van Morrison had given some money singing his tune, And I remember thinking at that point, like, these people aren't so far away, They're just guys who, and he was impressed, it was nice. But he was impressed with our singing or whatever. It didn't matter. He was touched, and it meant something. So many years later, of course, Van didn't remember the busker guy. Of course not. many years later, a friend of mine called me, Marina Guinness. She's a lovely one of the Guinness family. Again, I knew her from busking. So she said to me, look, it's Van's 50th. Do you want to come along? Bring a bottle of port. Bring your girlfriend. Don't tell anybody. It's a very intimate thing. I just think I think he'd really like you, and I think you should come. And I was like, are you serious? I don't. She's like, come on, it'll be deadly. He's going to have it down at my house, and there'll be a few people there you might know, but come on. Bring your guitar, be brave. I'll see you on the night. So I got on my scooter, me and my girlfriend, and with my guitar, and I drove out to Kildare where it was. It was like a 2-hour drive on my scooter. Got to this huge house, parked my scooter outside and was nervous, walked in, and I was expecting a big party, and I was expecting a ton of people, and it ended up being about 20 people at this party. And it was the first people I saw when I walked in was Van and Jerry Lee Lewis sitting together. And then a bunch of Van's girlfriends at the time, and Kerry Lee Lewis, Jerry's wife, and a bunch of kids and a few dogs. Basically, it was kind of like a few friends and very mellow. And Marina was like, "Everybody, this is Glen. He's a friend of mine." And everyone was eating. I remember Van was eating peas, or I just remember a spoonful of peas in his mouth, and he was like, sort of nodded hello. It was his birthday, so I wasn't. I was like, "Oh, how he is," and I sat down. And I had some food, very nervous and very excited. I was in the presence of the great Van, and really blown away. And later on that evening, everything sort of mellowed out, and everyone was sort of drinking and disappearing into different rooms and having a smoke and just basically being mellow. And then this woman came into the room and she was like, everybody gather up. Van is singing some songs in the kitchen. I was like, wow, went back and ran into the kitchen, and everybody was kind of standing around Van, who was leaning against the fireplace, locked. And, him and Jerry Lee Lewis holding each other up, the two of them very drunk, and playing songs, playing like Hank Williams tunes, and just playing old, like Blind Willie McTell tunes, like amazing music, old music. And, he played a load of songs. We all just sat there listening to him, really enjoyed it, half cut, the two of them, lashing out the old tunes. And the room was very comfortable, it was very mellow. And at one point, Van said, does anybody want to hear a song? He was throwing out requests, and I didn't say anything, and nobody really, people were asking for, your cheating heart, and he'd lash into it, whatever. And he said, anyone want to hear a song? So I said, from the back of the room, I said, I sort of leaned forward and I said, Hungry for Your Love, Van. Hungry for Your Love is a song that's on Wavelength, one of Van's early 80s records. One of his lesser known records, an amazing album. And it's one of my favourite songs of his. And I said, Hungry for Your Love, and he looked over and he really loud, he said, you don't know me. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I was like, I totally withdrew into myself, and everyone in the room was like, because it was the first sort of aggressive or negative thing that had come out of his head, his mouth all night, and we were, I was the butt end of a bit of aggression. So I totally felt it, man. I freaked out and I left, put my jacket on. I was like, I want to get out of here, man. So I'm not welcome. It's no big deal. Look, I'm just going to go, have a great night. I'm just, and I was freaked out because he's my hero, one of my great heroes. Sure. And I just thought, that's pisser, So Marina came out, she's like, no, come back in, it's cool. Like, he's a bit weird sometimes. But come in, he's all right. He's a real teddy bear, just come in, he'll be mellow in a little while. He's a bit drunk, just be quiet, or whatever. So I came back into the room and I stayed, because I wanted to watch. I was really happy to be there, but I knew I wasn't gonna, I knew this was gonna be something other than what I expected it to be. And he played a few more songs, and he said, anyone want to play a song? And he held the guitar up. And of course I wasn't going to play a song. I was like, nowhere. I was at the back of the room, terrified, And Marina was like, Glenn, you'll play a song. And I was like, no. And she's like, come on, Glenn. And everyone was like, come on, Glenn, you play a song. Because I was probably the only other player in the room apart from him and Jerry Lee, the big bopper. And so he held up the guitar, and I thought, okay, then I'll play a song. Something in me went, I'll be brave, I'll step forward here. And he handed me, as I went up to him, he handed me the guitar and stood up and stormed out of the room. Like, as if like, well, you can play, but I'm not listening to you. And was gone. And everyone was like, oh no, not again. So it was just a double whammy, And I played a song. I thought, it doesn't matter, I'll play a tune. And I played a song. And it went down really. Everybody really enjoyed it. It was nice. I was very happy. It was a new song I'd written, and everybody play another. And so I played another song. And halfway through my second song, Van came back into the room and sat right in front of me with his back to me. Like there was no one else in the room near me. He came right up to me, sat right in front of me with his back to me, and I was thinking, oh God, what is going on here? I'm not challenging this man at all. I'm not giving him any reason whatsoever to dislike me, and I'm in trouble here. So at the end of the second song, he spun the chair around and he said, what did you want me to play? And I said, Hungry for Your Love. And he says, okay then, I'll play it, but you've got to sing it. And he was testing me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh wow, this is insane, And he took the guitar off me and he started playing it, and I don't know what key he was playing it in, and I was thinking, do I remember the words? Yeah, how am I going to deal with this, And he lashed into it, and I managed to, because I love the song, so I managed to get my way through it. And towards the end of the song, I noticed he was singing a little bit of harmony under his breath, and, given the classic Van going to, yeah, and he was grooving away, and we finished the song, and everyone was like, wow, this is great. It was like watching a boxing match or something, Everyone was like, come on, the kid is coming back, And Van was giving me a chance, which was amazing. We finished the song, and he said, do you know any Bob Dylan? And I was like, yeah. He said, it's all over now, baby blue. You take the first verse, I take the second verse. And he just lashed into it. Didn't talk, again, like very kind of aggressively looking at me, do I know the tune, So I sang the first verse, he sang harmonies. He sang the second verse. I tried a bit of harmony on him. It was incredible looking at someone who looks like Van Morrison, who sounds like Van Morrison, who's strumming guitar like Van Morrison, sitting in front of me, staring at me, singing a Bob Dylan song. And it was amazing. So we finished that tune, got through it, and everyone was like, wow, deadly, fair play. You did well. And I was blown away. I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened. Wait till I tell me mates, I just played with Van Morrison. It was the greatest thrill of my life. And we went out and we had I had a cup of tea, and I was like saying to Marina, oh, it's brilliant, it's great to be here. Thanks a million for having me, thanks for that. And he came in and he said to me, hey, you, come on in here. And he took me in with the guitar in his hand. He took me into this other room where there was nobody. And he sat down in front of me, his knees touching my knees, facing me. And he said, okay then, play. As if like, now I'll hear you, I was like, wow. And I took the guitar off him and I played a song. And he took the guitar off me at the end of the song. He said, okay, what do you want to hear? And I was like, Madam George. And he lashed out Madam George. And he handed me back the guitar and said, now play. And basically he made me play every song I knew, of my own. He didn't want to hear covers. He just wanted to hear my tunes. And I got basically I got everything off Astro Weeks that I wanted to hear. I got One Irish Raw. I got these songs that because I'm a big fan, I knew his catalogue really well. So I was able to call tunes that maybe he was even impressed by me knowing what they were. So he just, all night I got to hear some of my favourite Van Morrison songs and learned them because I watched his fingers and, learned all the bits and at the end of the night it was incredible. The sun had come up and he was supposed to be leaving early in the morning to play some festival that evening. And I remember his girlfriend coming in and saying, Van, you should get some sleep because you've got to go. He was like, I'm not doing it. And he just decided there and then he wasn't doing this festival and was like, play more. And so I played, and we played until about 8 o'clock in the morning. And at the end of the night, he stood up and hadn't spoke to me all night, apart from singing, and stood up at the end of the night and he says, okay, nice voice, nice songs, blah, 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 see you later. And was gone. It was amazing.
This sounds a little bit like Yoda and Luke Skywalker.
That was exactly what I was thinking as I was sitting there. This is like, because as a young musician, I suppose, or as a young artist of any description, what you're always looking for is a Yoda. You're always looking for a guru who's going to show you.
The Jedi Master. Would you do a Van song for us?
Sure. I'm hungry for your love. I'm hungry for your love. I'm hungry for your love, but I can wait now. I'm on the telephone, and I'm all alone. here in my heart. And though we're far apart, you're part of me now. And after all the years, and after all the tears, and after all the tears, there's just the truth now. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you now. Yeah. And I love you in Buxton, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love those railroad boots you're wearing, yeah. And I love you, 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 I love you. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you. I got such a lot of love, I'm gonna give it to you now. Oh, to you. I'm hungry for your love. I'm hungry for your love. I'm hungry for your love, but I can wait now.
That is Glen Hansard of the Frames channeling Van Morrison on Mixed Bag. Wow. Wow. The student, I don't want to say rivals or surpasses, but certainly is in the same ballpark as the master. Glenn, I have to confess that we were a little bit late on the Frames coming into your story at the time of the fourth album, which is, by the way, For the Birds. That's not a comment, that's the name of the album. And you can find out anything you need to know about the Frames by dialing up www.theframes.ie. So, at the same time that I'm confessing coming in a bit late on the Frames, I tell you that we will chronicle whatever happens from this moment on out on this program. And with that in mind, is there something new out of the hopper that you can close the segment with?
Yes, yeah, there is. If you look and find you lost your place to the girl behind with the honest face, ain't that the way? In your hero, you walked by unbroken feet with the girl you found between the roof and street on a thin escape. And I can't explain where the blood goes. And I can't explain, 'cause I don't know. It finds a way. come and look for me, not to wait. And the wise, well, they talk of honesty, while the boats, they keep pointing, always set for sea, and their fools escape. And I can't explain where the blood goes, and I can't explain, 'cause I don't know. It finds a way. And I can't explain where the love goes, and I can't explain, 'cause I don't know. It finds a way. Yeah. It finds a way. Oh, home.
And that just about does it for this edition of Mixed Bag Radio. My thanks to Glen Hansard of The Frames for being our guest. Thanks also to Bill Kolar, Chris Hall, and Bruce Rains. If you'd like to know more about our programs, please visit our website at www.mixedbagradio.com. This is Pete Fornatale. Thanks for listening.